Welcome back to those that have joined us before, and welcome to everyone that's new. Thank you all for the interest in joining our webinar series. I'm Joe Sagona, Head of Business Development here at MGM Technology Partners. And in the next 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to be talking all about MGM's approach to the transition from spreadsheet-based test management to dedicated test management tool. First, a little bit of background. The presentation will be from 30 to 45 minutes. It will be recorded, and everyone here will be able to get a copy of the recording. And then any questions that you have, just throw them into the chat, and they will be answered at the end. We'll have a little Q&A session. For those who are new, a little background on MGM. MGM is an international software company. We have the goal of bringing complex, scalable enterprise-level applications to production. And we do this by offering consulting, custom development, as well as several different SaaS offerings to ensure that we can deliver the complete package to our customers. And for our agenda today, we're going to be covering why test management, the easy Excel-based start, finding, evaluating, and selecting a tool, MGM, our current test management tool solution, as well as the live Q&A at the end. And so next up, our speakers today are going to be Oliver Storch and Richard Honig. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and take it away.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction, and also a warm welcome from my side to our webinar series on test management. Today, we're talking about switching from Excel-based test documentation or spreadsheet solutions to a dedicated test management tool. As Joe said, my name is Oliver. I have been with MGM for 16 years now, working as a project manager in software development and QA. And for the last 3 years, I've also been the product manager in charge of developing our own test management tool. So first of all, no worries. This is not going to be a sales pitch, but what we will share today is based on our experience. It is a guide to choosing the right tool, what you should expect to pay for a tool, some practical tips for managing the migration process, and so on. And secondly, this is not to blame Excel at all. Excel is a great and powerful tool for many purposes. But when it comes to sophisticated task management and projects with multiple teams and multiple testers, there are better options. And this is why we're having this webinar, to show you these options. Now, you may ask, why listen to us? Why should you care what MGM thinks about test management? As Joe mentioned earlier, we have been building and testing software for 30 years now across a wide range of industries. And one of our largest projects is Elster Online. That's the German government's tax portal. And it's being used by all German citizens and all the companies. And in this project, we have almost 100 testers involved. And across all the projects from the company, we work with about 250 testers. And that's a lot of QA expertise and also the foundation of what we're sharing with you today. Now, let me hand things over to Richard. He will walk you through what is task management and why it is important. And then I will be back with a to-do for a migration to a tool.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Ollie, for the introduction. My name is Richard. I work for MGM for 4 years now. I started out as a pure software tester in the QA department for a big project for Lidl. And right now I'm doing also quality assurance again, but also business analyst for our own test management tool with a special focus on risk-based testing. But that's not the focus for today. We are firstly talking about why test management is important and why it matters. So first, maybe we have to take a look at what is the aim of testing in general, because you may think, or when we talk with other people that are not in the QA department, they think you are there to catch the errors, to find the bugs in the software. But that's not really the purpose, because we as testers, our job is it to prove that the software works as specified. Of course, we will find bugs. Of course, we will report them. but in the end, we will provide a documentation to say the software works as it is required. And why we need test management, I want to talk about when taking a look at the different phases of the QA cycle. So first part, when we get a new requirement, is the test planning. So we determine the test scope, what needs to be tested, what are our testing goals, our objectives, and who is there at all to do the testing. And of course, we can do this with any tool or no tool at all, but getting all the information together and store it in one central place is essential to establish a good testing process, and therefore a test management tool is really helpful in this regard. When we move to the test analysis and we review the test basis, so what are the documents, the specification documents, the requirement or the story tickets, etc., it's also very helpful to have them in one central place, and you do not have to switch between different applications, different folders on your hard drive or on a shared drive, but to have it all together so that you can refer to it easily. When it comes to test design, and we actually specify the test cases and the test data, of course, it's also very beneficial if we have all the test cases in one place and not scattered across different hard drives, for instance, so that we can see, okay, which test cases have I already written, which still need a review, for instance, which one do I need to adapt because my colleagues said in the review, okay, you have to work on this a little more. There, the test management tool also comes in handy. Then the next step is the phase of test realization, when we implement the data or we implement the test environment so that we can then afterwards do the testing. Our test management tool helps us to see which configurations we have already covered, which still needs to be covered, which test data are being used, and so on. And of course, during the execution phase, we want to document what we did and what were the results, and to store it in a sophisticated way so that in the next phase, in the test completion, when we derive reports and consolidate all the results, we again have it in one place and don't need to refer to different documents in different places. And what is running in parallel to all of this is the phase of the test monitoring and control, where the test manager is getting an overview. What is the status of the different phases? Who is working on what? Are we finished with that phase? Can we move on to the next? And so on. And also the test manager wants to have some kind of dashboard maybe, or at least know where to look at so that they can make the right decisions, the informed decisions. And all beginnings are easy, indeed, because test management can be done with Excel. It's very easy to create test cases with Excel. You can have structured folders and files. And Excel itself is as a spreadsheet, offers a structured way of implementing test cases with all the spreadsheet functionalities. Therefore, it's an easy way to start using Excel as a test management tool. So you can do the planning, you can do execution with Excel, and also verification easily. And as soon as there are a certain size of testers involved in the project, so for instance with 1 or 2 people, it's still manageable and applicable to do it this way. But further on, if there are more people working together, it will be more difficult. And we actually know what we're talking about because we did it ourselves. So 30 years ago, when MGM started, we used Excel as a test management tool. We even created our own tool for it. It's called Manuela, And you can see from the title of this that it's very much manual work, manual labor involved with this. Even though we already used macros, it's a German screenshot, but yeah, you probably are familiar with the UI anyway. So we spent a lot of effort into developing our own tool using Excel, and it worked the first 10 years or so until we noticed that we really need to professionalize and use a proper test management tool, because there are certain limitations of Excel which a proper test management tool does not have, or not in the same way. And oftentimes what we as users see is only the tip of the iceberg, and a lot of problems is hidden underneath the surface and will not be noticeable to all the users. So first, for instance, you can, of course, maintain test cases in Excel, but over time, as your test basis grows and you need to adapt test cases, you have to go into each and every single one of them to do an adaptation, and this can get really tedious over time. The same applies to templates. When you want to extend your templates, you probably have old test cases already. And if your template adapted, if you inserted a new column, for instance, for a new key performance indicator that is now important to you, you also need to go into each and every file to add this manually. Versioning is something that you can do with Excel. You can have your own folders for an archive, or for already released versions and so on. But it stacks really, and you are creating a lot of junk file which occupies a lot of space on your hard drive, which you probably don't want to do. And if you would want to collaborate with other people in your project, it's possible with Excel. Certainly, it has a way of access control so that not two people work on the same file that is, for instance, on a shared drive. So Excel prohibits this, but this can also be a bit problematic if one user is blocking a file for all the time and is not noticing it, for instance. So you want to have a tool with proper collaboration and also permission tools. Next up is when you want to format text, or when you want to insert images and so on. You can do it with Excel, of course. But as you know, probably, you have the cells or the cell sizes. For instance, when you want to insert an image, don't really adapt. And if you do it manually, it screws over all your document. That's something really ugly when doing test management with Excel. And most of the proper test management tools on the market offer solutions for that. When you want to create reports, it's doable with Excel. You can cross-reference other test cases and collect all the data, albeit the performance might be really slow for such a reporting documents. And with a out-of-the-box test management tools, they certainly have solutions to do proper reporting and to get all of the data that you want to use for a report. And most importantly, or the worst case is, data loss. Someone just deleted your files of test executions or of a template, and you have to restore it somehow. If you're lucky, it's still in the trash of your of someone's hard drive, and you can restore it. If you're unlucky, well, I hope you have time so that you can restore the data manually, or someone just says, okay, we live with the data loss. And all of this together can also be a bit embarrassing if you want to professionalize and you have an audit or a review by an external company, or regulations wise or something similar, and they see that you are doing test management with Excel. They might question your professionality. And all of this combined leaves us with the wish to professionalize, to use a tool that is made for test management, and how you find such a tool and evaluate and establish and so on is now the part of Oliver to present.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, so now we know why a test management with a dedicated tool makes sense. And next, I will guide you how to find yours. So on the market, there are over 200 test management tools. And about 30 to 40 of them are viable for professional use. You can see some of the key players here on this G2 quadrant view. The source of the information is linked below in the slide. And some of those applications listed here are well known in the industry. Others are rather niche products, and also we have some open source tools represented. Some are budget friendly, others are more enterprise focused. Let me give you now a framework to help narrow down the list to fit your needs. First, you should start to build up a criteria catalog of your must-have features. So think about features like test management, planning and execution, reporting, traceability, or if you have any regulatory compliance to meet and so on. Whatever is needed for your company's business, that should be part of this catalog. And then also consider language requirements. Is English sufficient for your tool, or do you need other languages? Think about interfaces, integrations. Maybe you want to connect to your ticketing system. Think about scalability. So will the tool still fit in 3 to 5 years? And also think about your support needs. Do you really need 24/7 support, or maybe are office hours sufficient? And then as a tip for this task, be realistic. So limit your catalog to 5, maybe 10 core criteria. So it's rather a short list than a catalog, but else you will get stuck in the research mode forever when you compare all the tool options of the different vendors. Then next task is to start the research. Maybe you start Googling for test management tool or just test tool, and check out 4 to 5 vendors, maybe up to 10 that look promising to you and that you would like to compare. But when you visit their websites, don't rely on only those data given on the websites, but use additionally some comparison platforms, for example, like we have their G2 or Capterra or GetApp and so on. And when doing this, you have to be a bit cautious because some reviews are paid or biased. So if a product has 0 negative reviews, then start to become skeptical. And also take a look at the tutorials and the user manuals and the setup guide and stuff, information like that. Do they look helpful, and would they work for your onboarding? So to onboard the teams to the new tool. And another tip here, look at the overall company. So research the framework conditions too. Is the brand professional, or is it just buzzwording? Do they have offices in your country or in your region? Where is the hosting located? And finally, who owns the data in the end? Is it up to you and your company, or is the data owned by the provider? And then, with all that information, you can build up a comparison table. Here's an example of how such a table might look. It's just a simple table with some ticks and crosses and circles. This example here is a real example from one of our evaluations. We anonymized the vendor names, but all the rest of the information is real. We had limited the list to 10 criteria and the list of vendors limited to 7. And then we investigated the features and compared. If you are interested in the real results of this evaluation, we can send you the full list with the clear names of the vendors. Just contact us. And again, avoid over-engineering your evaluation. You don't need a full RFP style grid with must, should, and nice to have features, but stick what to really matters most for you and your company. Well, now that that's discussed, let's talk about money. First, we have the acquisition costs. Pricing models vary widely. So some charge per user, others per test run, and others offer tiered pricing. So you have to find a way through the jungle. Therefore, get the pricing information from the vendors' websites and try to normalize the pricing based on your needs. For example, break down everything to costs per user and month or something. I can show you an example in a minute how such a comparison could look like. And then the next costs are migration costs. If you want to migrate your existing data into the new tool, you probably need a migration script. If you can do it in-house, that's great. You just need to take into account the efforts for the internal developer. If not, then look around. Most vendors, they offer paid import services. And don't forget the hidden costs, like expenses for training time or user onboarding. Try to keep those opportunity costs low. And then we have also the operational costs. If you're self-hosting, then you have to consider new hardware or new infrastructure if you host on-site, and also administration costs for the IT. Or if you run yourself a cloud space, then additional space may cost extra. And finally, also think about support efforts. If you want to get 24/7, that's premium, so mostly costly. Maybe 10 office hours a day on working days is sufficient for you and the service. Best here is if the support comes from the provider itself, not a third party, which mostly costs extra as well. Good. So here's an example overview of real vendors again. I have anonymized the provider names, but the figures and the numbers, they are real. We wanted to normalize to 30 users and the payment per month or year. So you can see we have different models. Some are with unlimited users, but have limitations for the test run executions. Others have a minimum of 100 users. So comparison is not always easy. But yeah, if you normalize, then you should find a way through. If you are curious to know who is who on that list here, again, feel free to message us and we will share the information with you. Well, so now once you've narrowed down your options, it's time to get everyone convinced in your company and to make a decision for a tool. First step is to involve all the affected teams and projects. You could do this by hosting some info sessions to inform about the idea and to announce what is to come. Another option is to invite some of your colleagues, QA colleagues, to attend vendor demos. So those colleagues can help you to make a decision finding the tool. And also you could invite small groups of testers to help define requirements. But yeah, just don't let them eat up too much of real work time. And in parallel, you have to keep your management informed. For example, with brief status updates, cost benefit calculations, return of invest projections, and so on. That helps. And you will also need a basic project plan and the risk mitigation strategy. So you could cover this, for example, by running trial migrations or other measurements. And the whole process should not exceed maybe 2 months. The goal should be to have a short list of 2 to 3 vendors in the end, and then you make a decision and pick one of them. All right. Once you've picked your tool, it's time to buy. This process varies by company. In larger companies, procurement usually handles the contract. In smaller ones, it's maybe up to the CEO to do the buying. That means the processes are very different, and we cannot make a clear suggestion for this. But what I can tell you is that there are two general license models. First is the traditional one. So you have a one-time license, you buy a specific version of the software. This is usually handy for on-premise use, but this model is quite rare nowadays. It is mostly bound to a specific version, and upgrades have extra cost. When having bought this license, you need to buy extra support mostly, which is charged annually. And what you should pay attention to for this case is the update cycles. So if they meet your company's update cycles as well, and if it does match and fit. And the other type are software as a service subscriptions. So you pay to use the tool, and upgrades mostly are included. This is not buying a license or a software, but you just have the right to use the service as long as you pay. This has become very common nowadays, and most of the vendors offer this one. Some have tiered prices. That means, for example, you get a discount if you select annual billing instead of monthly billing. But you have to find out for yourself to make a good decision between the savings and the accounting periods, what's best for your company. Professional tip here. Again, you have to check where is the vendor located and where is the data hosted. Whether you have the full expert rights in case if you would like to migrate to another tool later, or maybe the vendor will shut down someday. So take care of the location of the vendor. Good. Now, you have made the decision for a tool. You have signed the contract. Now, the hard work, the tough work begins, migrating your data and introducing the tool. First, you should identify which projects need to be migrated. This is also a good moment to archive old and outdated projects and stuff. Next step is to analyze the actual formats of your projects and find out about similarities and also the differences. And then you implement the migration. You could migrate manually. That is feasible for like 100 or maybe 200 test cases. If you exceed this number, then you should really tackle a scripted approach. That means best case, you have one or two in-house developers that write you a migration procedure using the vendor's API to import the data into the new tool. That is a fast and robust way to import the test cases and also the binary data like screenshots and videos. And after the migration procedure is in place, you have to coordinate timelines with each team and project. Every project may need its own window, so there may be test freezing periods involved. So you have to adjust and align with the projects. And finally, the procedure beforehand needs to be tested. So you run a test migration or a trial migration run on a staging environment, and then let your QA leads verify the results. And when everything's ready, you can freeze the old system, set to read only the old environment, run the migration, and then have the QA again run a smoke test on the day one of the new tool. If it passes, everything is great. If not, then you could roll back and work again with the frozen data and restore it and try again later. And in our migrations at MGM, the target is always to migrate the productive data overnight or over the weekend. So testers stop working with deprecated process one day and continue with a new tool on the next day. Right. On this slide, you can see an example how such a plan could look like. In the end, it's just a table with project names and some check marks and ticket links. And in this real example from one of our Confluence pages, we have blurred the names of the projects for privacy. Every test migration and final production migration had a separate ticket, so we could trace the process and the due dates. And we went through this full migration within 3 months. All right, next topic. Even after migration, there's still work to do when the transition to the regular operation takes place. First, you should define who is in charge of what. So who's the system admin? This is ideally someone from the IT department. Then who handles the license renewals or payments? This is critical, especially for software as a service. And next, who is managing the user access and the roles? And also, lastly, who takes care of continuous training? So who reads the release notes when the tool gets updated? A good idea here is to assign a so-called tool scout, so that person stays up to date and shares updates of the tool with the other teams and projects. And of course, you have to set up a support process. So don't let your users from the company contact the vendor directly, but route all issues into an internal contact who can triage and escalate if needed. And then also you have to make sure that future products use the tool and don't spin up their own test solutions. And you also need to think about training new employees. So ask the vendor for material that supports you with this, or maybe they have some tutorials, video tutorials, and onboarding material that they can share with you. Well, and with that, we've already reached the end. If you have questions, it's now time to drop them into the chat. In the meantime, while you're writing, let me quickly recap what we discussed today. So we talked about task management and why it matters. Then we covered how to find and select the right tool. We have explored internal communication, and we discussed the budgeting and the buying process. Then came the migration scenarios. And finally, we looked at what to consider once you're live with a new tool. And before we get to your questions, here's a quick plug. So MGM also develops a test management tool. It's built on our 30 years experience of enterprise testing, but it's not only for big players. We offer pricing for all company sizes, including small and mid-sized teams. You can sign up for a free trial and test all the features, including our risk-based testing, versioning, the whole package. Demo data is included, but you could also create your own data to evaluate the tool. And we know that the investigation, evaluation, and transition process takes a while. So unlike to other vendors who offer 4-week trials, we give you 6 months to evaluate it properly. And finally, on this slide, before we come to the questions, I would like to inform you that the past webinars, you can watch them on YouTube on our channel Q12 TMT. And the current webinar from today will be repeated next week for the Asian time zones. And the next webinar in our series is on September 18th. After the summer break, we will be exploring radical cost-driven approaches in task management, like when and how to skip less important tests. That's it from my side, from Richard and me. So back to Joe, and let's take a look at your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Oliver and Richard. We do have a couple questions that came in. The first one up is, what was the last straw that got you off of Excel? So what was the last thing that pushed us off?
Well, we had all the iceberg topics that you could see on one of the first slides, but I think, yeah, maybe it was data protection and role assignment. So when the company grew and we had more projects, we had also some sensitive projects that did not want to share information even within the company between all the employees, and we had to assign proper permissions, and that was tricky with Excel and shared drives. So I think that was one of the trigger points why we introduced it.
That's understandable. I could see the German government not wanting text data getting anywhere else.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that one we already answered. So I have someone asking about sharing the research. That's not a problem. I can just add that to the email going out to everyone with the link to the video once that's ready. I'll be sure to send over what research that we have.
Mhm.
Then I have one on the migration path. We have how did you handle discrepancies between your systems if the migration took you 3 months?
Well, there had not been so many discrepancies because each project had its own migration schedule, and we did a test migration for each of the projects. So, and every project had its own migration date in the end. So we had a verification process for all of the projects. They defined a QA who was checking the data and the consistency of the data. So it went fairly smooth, having the right timing and timetable that we followed.
Gotcha. So the overall migration took 3 months, but project by project was small chunked pieces
Yes.
going over.
So, and we rarely had outages. So mostly it was overnight or maybe one day of no working on testing, but that was the maximum for the very big projects.
Also, I can add that we ensured that the old data was still available in case something didn't add up. So we could still fall back to the old solution and repeat it again.
Yes. Which we even did. So that was a good fallback path.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Yes.
And the last one that I have, what points does your tool hit? So I'm guessing covering the points in the checklist. Someone's asking how many points of the checklist does the TMT cover?
All, of course.
Slowly
Of
make.
course. No. Well, we have some weaknesses here and there when it comes to reporting, then our tool could improve. We know that we have feedback from the market about this, and we're working on this. Also, we do not yet have so many AI integrated for a good reason, because we think AI is a buzzword and it has really strong opportunities, but still it is not really mature enough to be used productively. So, but these are the topics that we're dealing with and where we are about to improve. So you could guess who is the vendor on this list with a mysterious name E. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't see anyone else typing. Nope.
So we're perfectly in time, aren't we?
Oh wow, look at that. We have an extra 30 seconds or so if you guys want to stretch it a little bit. But I will say though, thank you to all of the attendees and thank you to both of our speakers today. Very much appreciated. And everyone stay tuned for emails where I will send out the recording for today, as well as some notes and research that we've done to share with you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then have a nice summer.
That's true. We'll see
Free
you guys
audio
after the summer break.
post-production
Will do.
by alphonic.com.
Thank you, everyone.
Herzlich
Bye-bye.
willkommen. Dies ist das Webinar
Bye.
zum Thema Software-Testmanagement vom